Well, you want to get it right. ERP software or ERP implementation, that's no secret. They run with an extremely high level of failed implementation or not even meeting, the expected outcome. So you want to get it right. You want to surround yourself with the best people. You want to put your best internal people on the team. You want to engage a system integrator partner who shares the belief, the culture of your organization.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our number one priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. And if you are joining for the first time, this is the segment for which we meet with many different guests. And today also we have very exciting guests. And we are going to talk about one of the most popular conversations these days in the ERP community, which is Phase 0. So we are going to have a lot of fun discussing that before we hand over to our guest. Some of the things from the logistics perspective, if you have not checked our previous episodes, there are many different guests and CIOs that we generally bring in on Fridays. So make sure you guys check those episodes out. We have many of them lined up in the future as well. The best way to get updated is going to be hit the bell button on my LinkedIn profile. That's where these episodes are generally broadcasted. For the most part, the interview segment we meet on Fridays between 8 to 11 a.m. Eastern, depending upon the availability of the guest. On that note, Jakob, I'm actually going to hand it over to you. Welcome. Do you want to introduce yourself and your current focus?
Thanks a lot, Sam. I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for hosting me, especially around this topic, which is close to my heart and experience, where we're going to talk about the Phase 0, but both the good cases and the less good cases. So I'm excited, and thank you a lot for having me.
Of course, and this is the work that we do as well, so it's always fun stories. So I think we are going to have a lot of back and forth in terms of those stories, what you have seen, what we have seen. But before we get into that, I guess from the audience perspective, again, if you're joining for the first time, we always like to create this whole three-way conversation. So if you have any sort of stories, comments, experiences, please comment them. You are part of the episode. We always like to have this conversation back and forth. So make sure you guys post your comments. If you want to start posting where you are joining from, we would love to know who we have in the audience. So Jakob, coming back to you again, one of the standard questions that we have for this episode that we always like to touch on, always ask every single guest, and that is going to be the theme of the podcast, which is going to be business growth. Okay, so it's really open-ended question. What's your perspective on business growth?
What my perspective is on this?
Business growth. Business growth, like growing growth.
Yeah, growth. Okay, but that's a really interesting topic, because we all here, to either grow our own business or help our clients grow their business. That's what motivates me to be a consultant. That's what motivates me to be an independent advisor. Help partners, help clients grow their business. So that's my short answer to that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much once again for that answer, and I completely agree. So now let's dive into Phase 0. I know there are many, many, many different flavors, and when we talk to clients, they all have their own ideas in terms of how they want to do Phase 0. Some clients, obviously, some understand.
Both in terms of how they want to do it, but also the necessary to, is it actually required to do it? How much is required to do, the level of it. So I think that's a really interesting angle to get started on.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, I guess. So let's talk about different segments of clients that you have seen, that you are getting, which sort of understand, which do not understand. Do you have any sort of trends that you might be able to describe? And before that, talk about phase zero, what it is, so that the audience also understands.
Yes. So okay, so let's just do a fly into what is phase zero. I think that's important for just have a baseline. So we get everyone on the same page, because there's a lot of fly-ins to do it. But the way I would like to see and communicate, and also for the audience to understand phase zero, is think of it as a self-awareness. Think of it, where's the client? Where's, like, if I want to do a marathon, what's my current state at the organization? To come in with an open heart, open mind, and see, okay, what's the current baseline? So self-awareness is absolutely, one of the words that come to my mind when I'm trying to communicate, or just get some of the get behind the wording of phase zero.
Yeah, so very interesting. And when it comes to being self-aware, I mean, most people have different ideas of what self-aware means. For example, in my case, I'm going to claim that I'm self-aware when I'm going to be clearly lost, to be completely honest. So in your case, do you see this trend with your clients as well, that sometimes they are going to feel that they are self-aware, but they might not be as aware, I guess?
And that's why I like the phrase self-awareness. I might think that I can run a marathon today, but I cannot run a marathon today. I can run maybe 5 miles. So the level, or the wording self-awareness, is actually really, really interesting, because
yeah,
you might think that you're at a certain level, but actually you're not at that level. So we come in as advisors to help you, understand which level are you actually at, and help you assess that level. That's basically, a really, really important thing.
Yeah. So let's talk about.
That's the same with the business. That's the same with the business. We come in, look at the processes. We come in, look at the data. We come in. We're not even talking about which solution you potentially might have, but just looking at where are you as a business, and comparing you to other good cases out there.
Yeah, so let's talk about the marathon, I guess, and let's say if you were to sort of translate that in the form of ERP, what that would mean. And I don't know if you're going to have any sort of stories, where you had a client, they were thinking that they probably knew everything. They were probably going to sign a contract, because that's how ERP projects are supposed to be done, right? Find a vendor, sign a contract, start, and then wonder whether you are going to succeed or not.
You might even have a client where they already chosen the software. They already chosen specific manufacturing software from a specific, ERP system. But it's pretty, it's too mature. And down the road, it shows that actually the software cannot do that thing, or cannot, be triggered to support your processes in that way that you actually thought. So that's one of the worst examples. Or you can say that you actually prematurely choose your ERP software, you start implementing it, and then you have to either put in a lot of money to do modifications, or even I've seen that where you even have to scrap the ERP system to take you to another system, because the assumption that you made by selecting that software were made on the wrong foundation. I think that's one of the really, really worst examples, and of course that's extremely costly. The other ones is I've seen a lot in my career. I've seen I usually say I've seen the worst of the worst, and I've seen really, really good examples. But there is a trend that, and that's also why this topic about the phase zero is so close to my mind, or close to my heart, is that preparation. The more you prepare yourself, the more you do your self awareness, the more you actually invest into this, the better project you actually get when you actually start the implementation project. Or you might be that you even decide not to do the the implementation project for a while because you have to do some improvement projects. And I think that's really also key here that we should try to address, because your readiness is just not there.
Yeah, so maybe pick a specific example, because sometimes for people it's sort of hard to relate with it, right? So you are saying that there are going to be assumptions that are probably not going to be true. It's going to be really hard. But when I look at, for example, in your case, I think you do a lot of work in the Microsoft ecosystem. When I look at Microsoft, Odoo, there is this assumption, a big assumption, leap, that you can customize anything and everything with Microsoft, maybe Odoo, and they couldn't be more wrong, in my personal opinion, because any systems, any systems, software systems, especially if they are going to have some sort of data model, database, there is a state of that software, and there are going to be assumptions with that. And if you are going to be too off from that, it's going to be really surprising. You mentioned that
Yes.
in some cases you have to completely scrap the software. In other cases, it may be very expensive. And even if you get it right, then nobody might use it. So what's the point?
That's true. That's true. And I think the key here, and it's true, I have been in the Microsoft space for more than 20 years.
Yeah.
And it's a very open ecosystem. I think most people, they know that. And that's also why, especially change management within this is very, very key. It's absolutely key to determine to what degree do you allow customization? How much of your business do you put on standard software? Understand the processes. Do you, as you say, do we allow to use the standard data model? Microsoft have made tremendous good things, huge investments, and so have the partners done. And that's why, with such an open ecosystem, you just have to, and that's back to my belief, you just have to emphasize change management is absolutely key here. Otherwise, you will be taken in all kinds of directions very, very quickly in such a project.
So maybe describe a little bit in terms of what is change management. So for example, let's say if a company, they have never done these projects, for them, maybe they bought some software, because ERP is probably not going to be the first software that companies are going to buy, right? Sometimes they don't necessarily understand the difference between different categories of software. They were successful. They are going to assume that, I bought 8 different software in the past. Why ERP is going to be so different? And obviously, there is a little bit of fear in the community, right? The people who are doing it for the first time, there is this sense that, okay, if you are going to hire the consultants, they are going to be really expensive. Sometimes people believe that, I don't know whether they are going to be honest, what you are going to get out of it. Obviously the consultants are all over the place as well. So it's very hard to believe, right? So in your experience, let's say if you're describing it to a person who has never done change management or the ERP project, what to expect from it?
Well, you want to get it right. ERP software or ERP implementation, that's no secret. They run with an extremely high level of failed implementation, or not even meeting, the expected outcome. So you want to get it right. You want to surround yourself with the best people. You want to put your best internal people on the team. You want to engage, a system integrator partner who shares the belief, the culture of your organization. So you want to do that assessment. You want to involve people like you and me, independent people who can actually guide you or even accelerate some of the business decisions that you have to make. So you can do a lot of things by putting your best people, really putting your best people into the project. And that in some cases involves that you have to free up or even backfill some of your internal people in the organization. So you need to understand that you cannot set a second league team. You really have to bring in people who knows about your processes, who knows about your business strategy, who knows about your current pains, and allocate those resources. If you're not willing to do that, then I'm sorry to say, then the project at the end of the day will not become a success. And then you as an organization, but also you as a team, you'll become, you'll be, it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah, so very interesting point. In my personal experience, I mean, when I deal with these companies, to be completely honest, things are not as binary. I mean, it's not best versus worst, and it's not that they are not willing to put their best people. The challenge is in gray. Okay, so what happens is, I, as the CEO or CFO, is going to assume that, okay, I have my rock star, okay, super rock star. They have done really well in the operational roles. They are probably one of the best salespeople. They are probably one of the best leaders. Okay,
Right.
but they might not be the best for ERP project. And that is the surprise that we get. And as consultants, when we get in these engagements, look, we have to be politically correct. Okay, let's be honest here. Okay, we are not going to say that the person who you have allocated may not be qualified, for the ERP project, right? Because they are probably our customers. But that's where you get the fundamental, foundation wrong, that you are assuming in your head. You have never sort of inquired how to hire, how to learn, how to basically just recruit the talent, and what talent is going to be required for these projects, and then you are starting on a wrong foot. So yeah, so I don't know,
No, but that's a really good. I like that, because it also goes back to what do we do as consultants. One of the things that I do, and I've been really proud of doing, is actually to get other people to shine. I love to come into organizations and working with introvert people, super smart people. They might not be the best communicators, but they know everything about their current system. So I get them to trust me, feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And I think that's really where a good consultant or a good advisor can make a huge difference. Because you're not gonna get people who who loves ERP, or who can you will have to find a really best way. But that's really what motivates me as well, is to get these super smart people. And that's why I like your question, Sam, because it's really intelligent to get these smart people to shine, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
And
no.
that's really where a good consultant can make a difference.
No, I completely agree. And obviously, it is going to be our role to make sure they are going to shine. But again, in my personal experience, I mean, there is a real skill set gap. Okay. There's a real skill set that is required even for the users. And sometimes they sort of underestimate. And I'll tell you specific examples of where we see the gaps. Okay. So again, the people that we are dealing with, customers, super sharp, super smart, no problem. Sometimes they are going to be PhDs. Sometimes they are going to be from Harvard. Okay. And again, obviously they know a lot. They know a lot about business. But when it comes to these specific things, very specific things, okay, that is going to be drawing out your processes. Sure, you know your business, but you don't understand how the process model works in the target ERP system or from the ERP dictionary perspective. The terms that you are going to use, for example, let's say you talk about project, okay? You have some project in your mind, but the version of project in the target ERP system is going to be very different, okay? Let's talk about data modeling, okay? Any software system, I don't care whether it is ERP, CRM, or whatever, right? There is these layered hierarchies, and these smart people, sometimes they sort of question, why do you need that? That is required for a very specific reason. And in their case, they will not be able to create even a very simple spreadsheet that is going to be the input for the process as well as for the system. So, so how do you fill that gap? I mean, even if we try our best, but there is a real skill set gap and there is a real mastery required for these projects. And you can't fill that skill gap unless somebody has done this multiple times.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. I would take it also back to the question that you started in the beginning with the change management, because a lot of this is about change management. It goes that, and I'm back to, if the user knows, they don't know the target system. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
They know the current processes. So we as change managers, we have, as consultants, we come in, embrace what they have today.
Yeah.
It's our job to know the target model. It's our job to bridge that gap between what they have today and the future. The reason why I just bring in the change management is that I worked a lot with resistant management and getting these individuals to feel calm, to feel open-minded, and not fear the future, meaning the new target model. Because I've seen a lot of cases where consultants come in, they know the target model, but they disrespect the current system, and they build a high degree of resistance. And what happens? The project goes south because they didn't embrace, they didn't take into consideration, or were not willing to listen to the current as is and just say, okay, this is the new target model. So I think it goes all the way back to change management.
Yeah, so very interesting. So I don't know. I mean, so maybe describe your position a little bit. So from your perspective, let's say when you talk about change management, does that mean agreeing with somebody, or does that mean aligning with somebody, right? So there is a difference, right? So if somebody is absolutely wrong and you know in your heart that they are wrong, okay, your job is going to be to open their eyes and make sure that they sort of understand, and that's where this whole alignment piece comes in, right? Now, when you talk about embracing these things, they could be absolutely wrong because, sometimes, as I said, simple terms, for example, what is their understanding of ERP may be very different from what an ERP is supposed to mean. And if they are off, then we have to align that understanding. And if we don't align, and if we are simply embracing, okay, you are great, you are amazing, you are wonderful, but you need to learn this.
Yeah, but Sam, let's be very concrete here. It could be something that's been built over 10, 15 years, modification on a modification within a legacy ERP system.
Yeah.
It's our role as consultants, as advisors, to come in, not fully understand it, but try to understand it to a level so we can convince the person who built this. Okay, actually, this way of doing things has actually become standard in the ERP system, and thereby, we need to go in a different direction.
So, okay, so I'm actually going to give you a story, okay, and hopefully you are going to have some stories as well. Maybe you can share those as well. So, Jakob, I don't know if you have any kids right now. I've got one who's 4 years old, and one who's closer to 6 months right now. Okay. So the 4 years old guy, super smart, super smart. Okay, he knows everything right now, to be completely honest. Okay, like literally everything. He can teach me. And one of the things that he can teach me is how to wear his shoes. Okay, and I don't know where he picked this from, but whenever he's wearing his shoes, he always has the opposite. Okay, left goes in right, right goes in left.
Right.
And mommy, everybody's telling him that, buddy, you need to understand. Okay, you are not getting this right. Okay, you are probably going to fall down. No, I know it. You don't know anything. How would he change this? This is what is change management in my mind. So Jakob, let's say if you are dealing with this situation, and this is the core problem, with the ERP project, people just don't know way too much, and they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. They don't know what they don't know. It's spot on. It's spot on, Sam.
So tell me.
There's not an easy. I can say what I've done throughout my career, and when I work with people at this level, I try to build trust. I try to understand what they have built during many years, and with that in my mind, I try to communicate what is the target model, what are we aiming for, so that we don't bring a modification or a change that they have built onto the new system. So for me, it's about understanding where they come from, but also understanding where we're heading.
Yeah, no, makes sense. So we have some comments, from the audience. Let's touch on them. Janice, thank you so much for joining. Then we have one more comment from Roger as well. So Roger is saying, in your experience, what are the most common mistakes organizations make during phase zero of an ERP implementation, and how can they proactively address these to set the stage for a successful project? Do you want to take this, Jakob?
Yeah. Hi, Roger. Thank you so much for your question. It's a very good question. I would say the most common mistake is actually you rushing, or organizations have a tendency to not to go deep into this phase. That is something that is rushed through, done in a very, very I would say unstructured way. You might already have chosen your ERP software. You might not do a readiness assessment. So that's how I see it. Is that, and what is interesting, and that's why the phase zero is so interesting, is that when things start to go south, when things actually are not going in the direction that we want, and you start to analyze, then you can track it directly back to a really bad or rushed through project phase zero. And I think that's really, really interesting. And that's why the phase zero as a concept is just absolutely key, because the more you invest into phase zero, your preparation phase, you can take that investment and save that. And that's also why I think, this title of this project, or this podcast today, you can actually take that as a saving directly into your implementation project. That's the message that's really key for me.
Yeah, that's very.
So many failing ERP implementations or troubled ERP implementations, and I can tie, when we do the analysis of what went wrong, we can tie it directly back to the project phase zero.
Okay, so very interesting. So obviously, let's touch more on that. So, I mean, I'll give you some examples of what we have seen in our experience and customers. I mean, obviously, phase zero, independent ERP consulting, everything is a buzzword these days, right? Everybody's thinking that, hey, I have got the strategy down, the formula down. I'm going to do phase zero and I'm going to be successful. Okay, and they don't necessarily understand the intent of phase zero, right? So we get these crazy requests from the customers, okay, and they are going to say, you know what, I'm doing this phase zero. I'm going to allocate, let's say, 2 months or whatever. They have this premeditated, there is no sort of negotiation there in terms of how they want to do it. They probably have very fixed budget in terms of how they want to allocate. And there is nothing fundamentally wrong about that, to be completely honest, okay? But you have to still analyze where you are. What is the state of your processes? What is the state of your data? What is the state of your skill set? And based on that, you need to be sort of coming up with some sort of strategy in terms of how much you want to invest in your phase zero, and what is going to be the defined outcome of that phase zero as well. But sometimes people do it, hey, I'm looking for a report. I need to send it to my executives. I need to get my budget approved. Okay, you can get the budget approved. Whether you are going to be right or not is going to be a question, because if you have not done enough due diligence in your phase zero, it's very hard to ascertain whether that is going to work, and at what cost. So do you share similar experiences? Maybe provide some stories from your perspective, examples, what you see.
Yes. So you mentioned data. Data it's a huge issue. Let's say you have worked with a client recently. Is going to migrate 4 ERP systems into one cloud ERP, and they knew that they had data issues. So one of the recommendations that I made was, okay, let's invest into streamlining and making, that you have one data model. We did that pretty early in the phase zero, because they knew that they were having issues. They knew, so they actually had you can say, an improvement project before they started the implementation project of the new ERP system, and they just came back some time ago and said they really loved that recommendation because they were actually able to save that investment directly into their ERP system, because they already had one data model. They already had cleaned out cleaned out the data issues that they were having. And I think that's really one key lesson here. Why you also should do, of course, your phase zero, is that it might lead to some improvement projects that you want to initiate before you actually start on your bigger project.
Yeah. So maybe
but another thing I would like to say, and that's back to what I said about the self-awareness. I have been part of projects where the output of the phase zero was, we're not going to do the ERP for 2 years because we cannot, as an organization, we're not on the same page. We need to invest into ourselves.
Yeah.
So the output was actually, we're not going to start the project until we're ready. And I think that's a really, really good lesson to come to, instead of starting the project on the wrong foundation, right?
Yeah, could not agree more. I think, that's the biggest benefit. Sometimes people might see that as a sunk cost because they might feel that they didn't get anything out of it. But that's a huge learning, because you could have wasted a lot of money in doing a transformation that was not going to work to begin with. So in my opinion, obviously that's a huge learning. But let's go back to your comment related to data model. So obviously, ERP projects are complex. Sometimes people sort of get it, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they understand, what is the complexity. But one of the core foundation of any ERP-centric initiative is going to be centralizing the data model, right? That's what is ERP. If that is not centralized, then I don't know if that is an ERP. So what is the process? So, and I don't know, in this particular example that you mentioned that they created the data model. So maybe describe that a little bit. Okay, what they had before. Did they have multiple systems? How was the data? Was data disconnected? And then what was the process of creating this data model?
So you can say the overall process. Well, let's do it concrete, because that's very good for everyone and also the viewers. Is that they had 4 different legacy systems, and let's take the product data or the inventory data. They had 4 different inventory systems. So one of the lessons learned and one of the recommendations was actually, okay, if we want one system going forward, we want to agree on a data model for the production data. We want, the items to be the same in all systems. So that was just one. That's one aspect. We agreed on customer data. We agreed on some of the vendor data. So we agreed on a data model, both in terms of having a uniform language to communicate, but also, of course, to have a data model that was, as I said, we come from 4 systems. We wanted to bring that into one system, so that we could accelerate the implementation. And then we started the process of cleaning and agreeing on, okay, what should be the master? What should be the master going forward? We wanted as much supported by the system as possible. This was a manufacturing company, so we wanted the bill of material, we wanted the production routes, we wanted everything within the system. So we started to clean and get that into a one data model. But as I say, it was a big task for this organization, because it was like 4 companies that you had to integrate into one data model. Right? They had to agree, they had to agree on these things, but we made it part of phase zero because it was such a big element of doing this transformation.
Yeah, so very interesting. So let's talk about that a little bit more. Okay, so let's say you are proposing that something needs to be mastered, and as far as my understanding of people know that they very rarely agree on anything, right? And that's why the ERP projects are so complex and challenging, right? So let's say if you are going to propose that, okay, we have to have a master, And in my personal experience, there is always a conflict, the fight, the tension between your marketing, accounting, finance, operations, you name it, everybody. Okay.
Yes, yes.
They are going to
Oh,
say,
big fights. Not only in terms of this, having a global chart of account, having what's the dimension going to be, what's the whole financial model going to be. It was a big fight. It was a big fight, but something that needed to be done and something that needed to be taken early on in the project.
Yeah, so let's go back to talking about master, and obviously every team is going to say that I'm the master here, I'm the boss. Okay, everybody feels that way, right? I mean, there is no way to cross that bridge, I guess. So let's say if marketing says that marketing needs to be master. Marketing is what is the most important. My finance is going to say finance is the most important. I am the boss. I need to be the master. So how do you reconcile this? Difference, obviously, and this is a real conflict. Real world conflict, right? So which system should be the master in your experience? How do you recommend, or what you have recommended in the engagement that you worked in? What should be the master, I guess?
It's a big question, right? It's a very big question, and it all depends. It all depends. If you're buying an ERP software and there's already tables for this within, and you can live with that. You can live with that current system. Why not use that? There's no reason to start buying a separate system. So my answer is always use as much standards as possible.
Yeah.
Utilize as much of your ERP as you can. And most ERP systems these days, they have actually really, really good master data setup. So use that. That will be my recommendation.
Okay, perfect. So I think we are coming close to our time right now. So Jakob, I don't know if you are going to have any sort of advice for our listeners as they are undertaking phase 0.
It's not something you should fear or anything. I think you should embrace it and be open-minded. That's my recommendation. Always try to get. And that's back to the self-awareness. Even if you find big improvements, it's really good to find those. It's really, really good. Embrace those. You have something to work on.
Yeah, could not agree more. I think
reach out to people like yourself, myself, who've done this multiple times, who have experience in doing these phase 0. I'm always here to assist.
Okay, amazing. So maybe you want to tell how they can reach out to you. Do you want to provide your information, I guess?
Yeah, so I work as an independent ERP advisor, and I've been doing ERP implementation, global ERP implementations the last more than 20 years. So reach out to me on my LinkedIn and shoot me an email. I'll be happy to take a call with you.
All right. Thank you so much for your time and insights. Time flies, Jakob, when I'm talking to you. On that note, if you joined for the first time, this was part of our interview series for which we meet every Friday between 8 to 11 a.m. Eastern. So make sure you guys are going to be here next week. We are going to come back with many different guests. For this year, we still have like 4 or 5. And then we are going to come back in the new year as well. On that note, once again, thank you everyone for dialing in. Thank you, Jakob, for your insights.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.